My parents knew my wife was sleeping with my brother, and they helped her hide it. When I finally confronted them, my mom actually said, "They're soulmates. Be happy for them." I just smiled, handed them an envelope and walked out. A few minutes later, my wife called, screaming and begging me to come back. All right, Reddit. Buckle up, because the story you're about to hear is wild. But before I get into the insanity, you need to understand what I thought my life looked like 10 months ago. I'm Lucian, 32M. I work as a senior logistics coordinator at a mid-sized shipping company. I make decent money, around $78K before taxes. Solid career, steady paycheck, respect from my coworkers, even though I sometimes smell like coffee and stress sweat. I'd been married to Victoria, 29F, for 7 years. She works in pharmaceutical sales. We met at some crappy happy hour downtown. She stood out from the crowd with this confidence that was hard to ignore. We weren't some perfect Instagram couple, but I honestly thought we had our stuff together. She was building her career, I was building mine, and together we were grinding towards something bigger. I'd been busting my ass for years, working overtime, taking side gigs on weekends, slowly stacking up savings for a house in the suburbs. Something with a yard. Maybe space for kids. Every extra dollar went into that dream. I skipped guys' nights, ate sad desk lunches while coworkers grabbed takeout, drove my beat-up car while she got the new Honda CR-V, all for the plan I thought we shared. And then there was my younger brother Pierce, 27. The family golden boy. Smooth talker, charming screw-up. Always finding his path. One minute he's a wannabe DJ, next he's a personal trainer, then crypto day trader, then amateur photographer. He'd throw himself into something for 3 months, get bored and move on. And me. I was the sucker who always had his back. Didn't matter how many times he borrowed money and never paid it back or flaked on commitments, I helped him. I got him warehouse gigs through my network when his credit was too shot to land anything better than a bus pass. I co-signed for his car. Covered his rent when he came up short, which was basically every month. Because hey, that's what family does, right? Dad's a retired mechanic. Mom worked at the post office until she took early retirement last year. They raised us on that whole family first, blood is thicker than water mantra. Victoria and Pierce had always been close. Too close, looking back. They texted constantly. Sometimes more than she texted me. She laughed at his jokes like he was Dave Chappelle instead of a 27-year-old man-child still making "that's what she said" jokes. And he was always finding reasons to come by when I was at work or traveling. But I never questioned it. She was my wife. He was my brother. Why the hell would I think otherwise? Then came the cracks. About 9 months ago, Victoria started acting different. Nothing huge at first. Just subtle shifts I couldn't quite pin down. She'd flip her phone face down when I entered the room. Started dressing up for girls' nights that seemed to happen every other week. When I asked about her day, her answers got shorter, vaguer. The suspicion started as that uncomfortable whisper in your head you try to dismiss because the alternative is just too awful to consider. But Pierce started showing up more and more, always with flimsy excuses. Needed tools for some project? Wanted to use our Wi-Fi for something? Had to drop off something that couldn't wait until the weekend. The timing was always off too. He'd show up 20 minutes after I left for the airport on business trips. And then there were the phone calls. I'd walk into a room and catch Victoria speaking in these low, intimate tones she hadn't used with me in months. As soon as she saw me, she'd wrap it up quickly with a "got to go, talk later." And when I asked who it was, obvious lies. And they got lazier every week. The breaking point came during a 4-day business trip to Phoenix in March. When I left, something felt wrong. Victoria seemed almost eager for me to hit the road. Kissed me goodbye like she was relieved instead of sad, practically shoving me out the door. On impulse, I stopped at Best Buy and bought one of those small wireless security cameras. Told myself I was just being paranoid, that I needed peace of mind while away. Probably nothing. I set it up in the living room, tucked behind some books on the shelf, with a clear view of the kitchen and front door. Synced it to an app on my phone. Figured I'd never actually use it. I was wrong. On day 2 of my trip, during lunch break, I opened the app. What I saw made me want to puke all over my sad desk salad. There was Victoria in our kitchen, wrapped around Pierce, full-on making out. The timestamp? 3 hours after she texted me, "Miss you, baby. Counting down till you're home." 3 hours. And the worst part? How comfortable they looked. Pierce had a key. When the hell did she give him a key? He moved through my house like he owned it, acting like the man of the house while I was out working to pay for the life we built. I sat in that sterile conference room surrounded by colleagues, watching my entire world collapse. 7 years of marriage. A lifetime of brotherhood. All bullshit. I didn't confront them right away. I stayed in this weird fog for the rest of that trip, going through the motions while my brain tried to process what I'd seen. When I got home, I played it cool while figuring out my next move. Made copies of the footage to 3 different cloud accounts. Screenshotted timestamps. Then I started really watching them. Once I knew what to look for, the signs were everywhere. I installed more cameras. Documented their schedules. Turns out, Pierce came over every Tuesday and Thursday during my standing meetings. Victoria had been lying about working late. I called her office. She'd actually been leaving early those days. It was all a web of lies. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. One Sunday morning, I cornered Victoria in our bedroom. Phone in hand. Footage queued up. "I know," I said, showing her the screen. She stared for maybe 10 seconds. Shock. Panic. Then anger. Not guilt. Not shame. Anger. "You put a camera in our house?" She snapped, like I was the problem. "My house," I corrected. "How long?" She broke down, but not like you'd expect. More like she was pissed she got caught than actually sorry. "It wasn't supposed to happen, Lucian. We didn't plan it. You're never here anyway. Always working or on those stupid trips. And Pierce was just there when I needed someone." Then she stopped crying and looked me dead in the eye, like I was the problem. "You're being dramatic. It's not like we meant to hurt you. Sometimes things just happen between people. You wouldn't understand. You've never been passionate about anything except saving money." It was like she slapped me. My wife of 7 years, caught red-handed with my brother, acting like I was the crazy one for caring. "We're telling your family," I said. "This affects everyone." She nodded, but there was something in her face that made me suspicious. "Yeah, okay. We should tell them together. They deserve to know the truth." So I called my parents. Told them to come over. Bring Pierce. Said we needed a family discussion about something important. 2 hours later, they showed up. Pierce trailing behind. And the second I saw their faces, I knew something was up. They looked ready. "Mom, Dad," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." My mother held up her hand. "Lucian. Honey. We already know." The words hit like a freight train. "You what?" "We've known for months," Dad said quietly, eyes down at his hands. "We were hoping you'd figure it out yourself and handle it maturely." I looked around that room. My parents, my wife, my brother, all staring at me. Expressions ranged from pity to impatience. Nobody looked ashamed. Nobody looked sorry. They looked like they were just waiting for me to finish my tantrum so they could move on with their day. "How long have you all known?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "Since February." Pierce finally spoke up for the first time since walking in. He had his arm around Victoria's waist, right there in my living room. "We tried to fight it, Lucian. But you can't fight real love." "Real love," I repeated slowly. "They're meant to be, Lucian," my mother said. "You've always had trouble with relationships. Maybe it's time to let this one go and find someone more compatible." My father nodded along. "Son, you need to be mature about this. They're happy. Don't you want them to be happy?" I looked at Victoria. She was holding Pierce's hand now. "So this whole meeting," I said, "this was your big reveal. You all planned this." We thought it would be easier this way, she said with a shrug. Keep it in the family. A clean transition. Your birthday seemed perfect, Pierce added with a smirk. New year. Fresh start for everyone. My sister Jenna, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. Maybe you two just weren't compatible, Lucian. Everything happens for a reason, right? I stood there surrounded by my entire family, being told I should be happy about my wife sleeping with my brother, that I was childish for being hurt, that I should just accept it and move on because they were meant to be. For a second I thought I might lose it completely, but then something clicked. This cold calm washed over me, and I found myself smiling. You know what? I said, voice steady for the first time all night. You're absolutely right. I should be happy for you both. Relief spread across their faces. Victoria actually looked satisfied. I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this, Lucian, she said. This doesn't have to change anything between us. We can still be family. Not at all, I agreed, reaching into my jacket. In fact, I have something for each of you. I pulled out 3 thick manila envelopes I'd prepared earlier and handed them out. 1 to Victoria, 1 to my parents, 1 to Pierce. What's this? Mom asked. Just some paperwork, I said, still smiling. Nothing urgent. You can read it when you get home. You're leaving? Victoria asked. And for the first time all night, she looked worried. Well, you're right about fresh starts and all that, I told her. I should give you 2 lovebirds some space to figure out your new living situation. I grabbed my keys and headed to the door. Oh, and Pierce, you might want to move your car. I'm reporting it stolen in about an hour. I walked out to the sound of envelopes ripping open behind me. Got in my car. Drove away. 2 blocks out, my phone started blowing up. First call from Victoria. I let it ring. 30 seconds later, another. Then another. By the time I checked into a Holiday Inn Express across town, not the Ritz, but clean sheets and nobody screwing my brother in it, I had 27 missed calls and a screen full of texts. Victoria's first voicemail? A masterpiece. Lucian, please, you can't do this to me. Come back right now. We can work this out. Please, I'm begging you. Her voice shook with rage and panic. But my mother's message really got me. Her voice was shaking with pure fury. Lucian James Parker, you get back here right now. This is not how we raised you. Family doesn't destroy family like this. Your father and I are very disappointed. Right. I deleted the rest without listening and ordered a pizza. Here's the thing, fellas. I had spent the last 3 months preparing for this exact moment. The day I caught their little kitchen performance, something inside me didn't shatter. It froze, turned cold, calculating. I documented everything. I planned everything. Talked to lawyers, financial advisors. Waited for the perfect chance to show them exactly how much I was worth to them. And they handed me that chance gift-wrapped with a bow. The envelopes. Here's what they contained. For Victoria, divorce papers already signed and notarized by me, plus a post-nup she'd signed 3 years back when we'd had trust issues about her spending. She'd completely forgotten about it, but it clearly stated that in case of adultery, she forfeited her claim to the house and most of our shared assets. Also included was an eviction notice giving her 30 days to get out of the house, solely in my name, and photos, dozens of them, showing her and Pierce in compromising positions all over our house from the past month. For my parents, copies of all the evidence, videos, screenshots, financial records showing how I'd been bankrolling Pierce's life while he was screwing my wife under their noses. A formal letter cutting off my $800 monthly contribution to their mortgage since Dad retired. Cancellation of the family cell plan I'd been paying for that covered all 4 of us. For Pierce. The real kicker. Legal documents proving that the 2019 Honda Civic he'd been driving was registered in my name. I'd never transferred the title after co-signing because his credit was garbage. The keys were with my lawyer, and I'd already reported it stolen since he no longer had permission to drive it. A formal demand for repayment of every loan I'd ever given him. Itemized with dates and interest, totaling just over $23,400. and a notice that I'd provided his probation officer with evidence of his recent activities. Turns out, sleeping with your brother's wife while living in his house violated several conditions of his probation from that fight I'd helped him beat 2 years ago. But the real genius was what I'd done in the months leading up to this. I'd quietly separated our finances, moving my direct deposits into a new account and leaving just enough in the joint account to cover mortgage and utilities so Victoria wouldn't notice. I'd transferred the house deed into a trust she couldn't touch legally. I'd documented every penny Pierce owed me over 5 years, every time my parents asked me for money while they already knew about the affair. Most importantly, I'd been recording everything since my suspicions began. The security system wasn't just one camera. It included audio pickups throughout the house. Every time Victoria brought Pierce over, every conversation they had about me, every cruel joke, every plan for their future, it was all saved. Around 1 a.m., barely 4 hours after I walked out, hotel security called my room. "Mr. Parker, we have a woman in the lobby claiming to be your wife. She's very upset and demanding to see you. Says it's a family emergency." I could hear Victoria screaming in the background. "Lucian, I know you're here. Just talk to me for 5 minutes. You're being insane." "Tell her I'm not available," I told security. "If she won't go, call the cops." The next morning brought a flood of messages that painted a picture of complete chaos. Victoria had apparently gone to my parents' house around 2 a.m., alternating between hysterical crying and screaming about how I was ruining everyone's lives over nothing. Pierce tried to calm her down by saying they could get through it together. That backfired when Victoria turned on him. "This is your fault," she screamed, according to a voicemail Jenna left me. "If you hadn't pushed to tell him, we could have figured something else out. Now he's trying to destroy all of us." Pierce stormed out, leaving Victoria sobbing on my parents' couch while they scrambled to figure out how to deal with the legal and financial bomb I'd just dropped on them. My mother left me 15 voicemails that night. By number 10, she was crying. By number 13, she was threatening to call my boss. By number 15, she was begging me to come home so we could work this out as a family. But the real drama? That was only just beginning. See, when I discovered the affair, I didn't just gather evidence. I spent weeks consulting lawyers, financial advisors, and even a private investigator named Rita. She specialized in infidelity cases. She'd been worth every penny of the $5,000 I paid her. "Most people think affairs are just about the sex," she told me during our first meeting in her cluttered office that smelled like stale coffee and cigarettes. "But there's usually a whole web of lies around them. Financial, social, professional affairs don't happen in a vacuum, Lucian. They're usually part of a bigger pattern." She wasn't exaggerating when she warned me about the depth of the deception. She was dead right. Through Rita's investigation, I learned that Victoria and Pierce hadn't just been having an affair. They'd been planning an entire future together. They even had a joint savings account I'd never heard of before. It was funded by money Victoria had been slowly skimming from our shared account for 6 months. We're talking $400 to $500 at a time, always with some reasonable explanation. An emergency car repair, medical bills, helping my sister with rent. All lies. They'd been apartment hunting together in the nicer part of town. They'd been talking about when to file for divorce, how to break it to me gently, and even planning what story to tell our mutual friends to make me look like the bad guy. But the most damning discovery was this. They'd been talking to a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, but a real estate lawyer. They'd been exploring whether they could claim common-law marriage rights to our house if they could prove they'd been living together long enough while I was traveling for work. The consultation notes Rita obtained through her connections showed they'd been planning to gaslight me, make me think I was paranoid and controlling, while they established legal residency in my own home. Then they'd claim I was emotionally abusive and try to get a restraining order that would force me out of my own house. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated heist designed to steal my life from the inside out. But 4 weeks after the confrontation, my college roommate Tommy called with something that froze my blood. "Lucian, I need to ask you something straight up," he said, his voice full of concern. "Are you losing your mind? Like, mentally?" "What the hell are you talking about, Tommy? Your brother Pierce hit me up last week through Facebook. Said you'd been having some kind of breakdown and your family was worried about you. My hands clenched into fists. He what? Over the next few days, I discovered that Pierce and my parents had been calling my friends, co-workers, and acquaintances, painting me as mentally unstable and asking them to document any concerning behavior they'd witnessed. They were building a case to have me committed. My work buddy Carlos called. Lucian, I got this weird call from some guy claiming to be your brother. He was asking about your work performance, whether you'd seemed stressed or aggressive lately. Wanted to know if you'd ever talked about hurting anyone. Then my gym partner Mike. Some lady saying she was your mom called the gym asking if you'd been acting violent during workouts. The most chilling call came from my former therapist, Dr. Morel, whom I'd seen briefly 3 years back during a rough patch at work. Lucian, I got a very disturbing call from your mother, he said. She was asking about our sessions and whether I'd noted any signs of potential violence or mental instability. Dr. Morel, I haven't talked to my mother about therapy in years. What exactly did she say? She claimed you were having paranoid delusions about your wife cheating and that the family was worried you might hurt yourself or someone else. She wanted to know if I thought you needed an involuntary psychiatric hold and asked if I'd be willing to testify about your mental state. That conversation led me to a discovery that shook me to my core. I called Dr. Morrison, the psychiatrist my mother had mentioned in some text messages Rita had recovered from Victoria's cloud backup. Mr. Parker, yes, I've been expecting your call, Dr. Morrison said calmly. Your family has provided extensive documentation about your deteriorating mental state. They're very concerned about your well-being and the safety of others. What kind of documentation? Well, your mother and brother have recorded several incidents of paranoid behavior, accusations against your wife, and obsessive surveillance of her activities. They've documented threats of violence, property damage, stalking behavior. They're worried you might be developing some form of delusional disorder, or even early-stage schizophrenia. They'd already built the case. They had evidence of my paranoid behavior that was actually evidence of me discovering their affair. They'd been recording my confrontations with them, editing the recordings to remove context, and using them as proof I was losing my mind. The most chilling part was a message Rita had recovered from my father's phone. Lucian always trusts family completely. He'll never see this coming until it's too late. They were right. I never would have seen it coming in a million years. The day after I discovered their psychiatric manipulation scheme, my phone rang from a number I recognized. My grandpa Rufus, Dad's old man. Lucian, I owe you an apology, he said without any pleasantries. His voice was gravelly from 60 years of cigarettes and construction work. I had no idea what they were doing to you. Your father called me this morning, begging me not to reach out, practically panicking, and that's when I knew something was seriously messed up. What do you mean? He told me you were overreacting to Victoria and Pierce's friendship, that you were being vindictive and trying to destroy the family over nothing. But the way he said it, Lucian, I've known your father for 55 years, and I've never heard him sound that panicked. What really happened? So I told him everything. When I finished, there was dead silence for almost a full minute. Jesus Christ, he finally whispered. Son, I'm sorry. I always thought there was something off about how they treated you compared to Pierce. But I never imagined. Look, I got a cabin up north. It's yours as long as you need it. And I'm calling every person in this family to tell them what really happened. That started the second wave of consequences that spread through our family. Within 48 hours of Grandpa making his calls, the extended family was buzzing with information I hadn't even known about myself. My cousin Isabel called with the first bomb. Lucian, I need to tell you something that's been eating at me. Last month, when you were on that business trip to Atlanta, your mom called asking if I could cover for Victoria if anyone asked where she was. Cover for her? Huh. She told me Victoria was going to some kind of couples retreat with Pierce to help work through family issues and that if you called asking about her whereabouts, I should say she was with me having a girls' weekend. Made it sound like they were planning some kind of intervention or surprise for you. That revelation led to discovering an entire network of lies my family had been maintaining to cover the affair. Jenna had been asked to provide alibis for family planning meetings, that were actually hookup sessions. My Aunt Carmen had been told Pierce was helping Victoria with a surprise home renovation project. Even our 70-year-old neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, had been recruited. My mother told her Pierce was doing handyman work around the house and asked her not to mention it because it was supposed to be a surprise for my birthday. The web of deception was impressive, but the revelation that broke me came from my cousin Ronan, who worked IT for a big tech company and knew his way around digital forensics. "Lucian, sit down for this," he said when he called me at the hotel. "Rufus asked me to dig into some of the tech stuff in your evidence file. I've been going through those cloud backups Rita pulled, and I found something you missed." "What?" "Group chat screenshots. Screenshots of text conversations between Victoria, Pierce, and your parents, but also screenshots of conversations with other people. They weren't just planning to have you committed, Lucian. They were planning to take over your entire life. The screenshots Ronan sent me were worse than anything I could have imagined. My own family discussing me like I was a problem to be eliminated rather than a person being destroyed. Mom, when Lucian finds out, he's going to lose his mind. He's always been unstable when things don't go his way. Pierce. I've been documenting some of his controlling behavior with Victoria. Phone calls where he sounds paranoid. Stuff like that. We might need it for court. Victoria. He's been so suspicious lately. Borderline stalker behavior. We can definitely use that to show he's dangerous. Mom. Dr. Morrison said if we can show a pattern, we can probably get a 72-hour psychiatric hold for evaluation. Pierce. Then what? He gets out in 3 days and comes after us with a shotgun? Mom. Not if we can prove he's a danger to himself and others. If he's declared mentally incompetent, I can take control of his finances and property until he's stable. Dad, the house alone is worth $280,000, plus his 401k savings. Victoria. And I'd still be his wife legally until the divorce goes through, which means I'd have access to everything. Reading those messages felt like knives in my chest. Armed with this new evidence, my lawyer filed additional motions that completely changed the scope of the case. We weren't just going after divorce and debt repayment anymore. We were documenting a criminal conspiracy that could have brought felony charges against everyone involved. Within 48 hours, I was hearing from cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends who had been getting panicked calls from my parents, trying desperately to control the narrative. But Rufus had been busy too, and the truth was spreading faster than their lies ever could. The annual family reunion scheduled for July? Cancelled. Half the family said they wouldn't even show up if my parents were there. That evening, Rufus called me with news that flipped everything upside down. Lucian, I want you to know something. I've been thinking about this situation, and I need to tell you what I've decided. I'm changing my will. Your father was supposed to inherit the trucking business when I die, but after what he's done to you, I can't leave it to him. I want you to have it instead. I was stunned. Grandpa owned a successful freight company that employed 23 people and pulled in serious revenue. Real money. Grandpa, I don't know anything about trucking. No, but you understand logistics. The business needs fresh blood anyway, and you're the only person in this family I trust to run it. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt like I had something to build toward instead of just something to escape from. Meanwhile, the consequences kept piling up for everyone else. Pierce had been arrested for driving without a valid license after his got suspended for violating probation terms. He was now looking at potential jail time and had moved back in with my parents, who were barely hanging on to their mortgage payments without my monthly $800 contribution. Victoria had moved in with them too, since she couldn't afford her own place after getting fired from her sales job. Turns out her company had strict policies about personal conduct, and when word spread about her affair, well, small towns love gossip, several clients demanded new account reps. Her boss decided she wasn't a good fit for the company culture anymore. According to Jenna, the only family member still talking to me, the living situation was a complete disaster. They're at each other's throats constantly. Pierce blames Victoria for pushing too hard, too fast. Victoria blames Pierce for not being able to support her financially like I did. Mom and Dad are barely speaking because Dad thinks Mom pushed this whole thing too hard and too fast. What do you mean Mom pushed it? I asked Jenna. Apparently, she's the one who encouraged Victoria to follow her heart. When the affair first started, Dad went along with it, but he never really believed it would work out. Now he's saying Mom destroyed the family for nothing. The irony was perfect. The woman who orchestrated my betrayal was now getting blamed by everyone else. But it still wasn't over. My lawyer had been building a case that went far beyond divorce and debt collection. With the evidence I'd gathered, including the psychiatric manipulation scheme, he'd gotten the district attorney interested in potential fraud charges, misuse of marital assets, even conspiracy to commit false imprisonment. I had to make a choice. Did I want to pursue criminal charges that could send them all to prison, or was the civil case enough to make my point? I could wipe them out completely, or I could take what I needed to rebuild and walk away clean. I chose the middle path. File the civil suits for everything we can get, I told him. I want every penny Pierce owes me, plus damages and interest. I want Victoria to understand that actions have real-world consequences. But I don't want to send anyone to prison unless they force my hand. You sure? With the evidence you have, we could probably get significant jail time for all of them. Especially your mother and Pierce. I'm sure. I don't want to become the kind of man who destroys people out of spite. I just want them to understand they can't do what they did and walk away like nothing happened. But then came the surprise that shifted my perspective completely. 5 days after that conversation, I got a text from an unknown number with a screenshot attached. It came from a mutual friend who'd gotten pulled into the drama through Facebook connections and small-town gossip networks. The screenshot was from a group chat between Victoria, Pierce, and my mother. Dated 9 months earlier, before I discovered anything. Mom, I think Lucian is getting suspicious about you too. You need to be more careful or find a way to handle him. Pierce, he's too trusting and too busy with work to figure it out. Guy's clueless about everything that isn't on a spreadsheet. Victoria, I feel guilty sometimes, but honestly, he's so focused on work and that stupid house fund, he barely pays attention to me anymore. Mom, maybe you two are meant to be together. Lucian has always been emotionally distant anyway. Even as a kid, he cared more about his projects and achievements than connecting with people. Mom, Lucian hates confrontation and drama. He'll probably just accept it and move on rather than fight about it. Victoria, God, I hope so. I can't keep pretending to be happy much longer. This whole situation is exhausting. Reading those messages was like being gut-punched all over again. My own mother had been actively encouraging my wife to cheat with my brother, while plotting ways to cover it up. That screenshot became the final nail in the coffin. I forwarded it to my lawyer. I sent it to Grandpa, who immediately shared it with the rest of the extended family. And then, in what was probably petty revenge, but felt like justice, I dropped it into our family group chat. The one with all the cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends. The response was immediate and brutal. Family members started removing my parents and Pierce from the group chat one by one. Relatives who had been neutral, or trying to stay out of it, suddenly picked sides. 5 weeks later, the final shoe dropped, but it came from a direction I never saw coming. It's been 14 months now since that birthday party that changed everything. I'm writing this from my new office in Denver, where Rufus' trucking business has expanded into full-scale logistics and freight management. We just landed a major contract with a national retailer to handle their Western distribution network. And for the first time in years, I'm actually excited about work. Samantha and I have been together for 8 months now, and she moved in with me last month. She's met Rufus, who has become the father figure I needed after cutting ties with my parents. I still talk to Jenna occasionally. She's the only member of my biological family I keep in contact with, and even that's limited and carefully managed. She tells me my mother has basically had a complete mental breakdown. The woman who spent months orchestrating elaborate schemes to manipulate everyone around her apparently couldn't handle the consequences. Pierce served 16 months for multiple theft and fraud charges. According to Jenna, he blames everyone but himself for his situation. He's convinced he's the real victim in all of this. Victoria is struggling as a single mother. She's barely keeping it together financially or emotionally. She's been bouncing between retail jobs that barely cover rent and daycare, living in a one-bedroom apartment across town from our old neighborhood. She's been asking Jenna to pass along messages, begging me to help her get back on her feet for old time's sake. I declined. Firmly. Permanently. Victoria's been telling people around town that I was abusive during our marriage, that I was controlling and paranoid, and that the affair was her way of escaping. She's rewritten history to make herself the victim and me the villain. But it doesn't matter anymore. The people who know me know better. 6 weeks ago, my phone rang. Prison call. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Lucian, it's Pierce. Don't hang up. Brother. Just give me 5 minutes. His voice sounded different. You've got 2 minutes, I said. Look, I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, and I realize we all made some serious mistakes. I know you're probably still pissed, but we're family. Family should stick together no matter what. I get out in 4 months, and when I do, I'd like us to try to rebuild our relationship. Mistakes, I repeated slowly. That's what you're calling it. Come on, Lucian. Things got complicated with Victoria, but that's in the past now. We can start over. Put this whole thing behind us. I heard you're doing really well with Rufus's business. There it was, the real reason for the call. He'd been keeping tabs on me and my success. Actually, Pierce, I said, letting the silence stretch for a few seconds. Speaking of Rufus, he told me something interesting last week. Apparently, you called him about 7 months ago. Tried to convince him that I was lying about what happened between you and Victoria. Told him I was mentally unstable and that the family was worried about me becoming violent. The silence on the other end was deafening. Here's the thing, though, I continued, keeping my voice completely flat and emotionless. Rufus recorded that call. Every word. And you know what happened after he played it for me? He didn't just give me the business in his will. He signed the entire company over to me immediately. All of it. The trucks, the contracts, the property, the bank accounts. Lucian, I'm not finished talking. Your little phone call to Rufus? It wasn't just recorded. Rufus sent a copy to my lawyer and to the district attorney's office. Turns out trying to defame someone to interfere with their business relationships while you're incarcerated adds some interesting charges to your record. Your parole hearing got pushed back by at least 6 months. The phone went completely quiet except for the sound of his breathing getting faster and more panicked. So, I want to thank you, little brother. Every time you try to mess with me, my life gets better. Every time you think you're playing chess, you're actually handing me more pieces. Please keep trying. I'm curious to see how much higher you can push my net worth. You can't keep doing this to me, he finally whispered. You're doing it to yourself. You just called from prison to ask for forgiveness while simultaneously trying to poison my business relationships with lies. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. And that's why you're in prison while I'm running a multi-million-dollar company. I hung up and blocked the number. Some bridges are worth rebuilding. Others need to stay burned to ash. Because here's the thing, the affair was a gut punch. But discovering that my entire family saw me as a resource to be managed rather than a person to be respected, that was worse. Learning that was painful but liberating. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube, this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.